completionist response file number 1. All right, you got the evidence folder ready? You know, the Fiverr guy, right? He put the spreadsheet in? Awesome, great. You think I should get like a dog or something? Like, you know, make it look more personable? Maybe a ukulele or something? I don't know. Anyways, let's go with that. Maybe a middle part to the hair, something of that nature. You guys deserve answers, okay? I know I've been gone for a little bit, but I had to come up with a distinct line of bullshit. You guys deserve some answers. I can't do this, man. I gotta get in front of the computer, man. What the hell is this? Who sits in front of a bed? What kind of sympathy garnering shit is this? Let's be adults. Let's bring some facts. Let's bring some receipts. Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and yeah, ladies and gentlemen, let's just sit in front of a computer here, because I've got some receipts, facts, and logic in response to a video uploaded by The Completionist. Now, I thought I was actually long past this. The story, for anybody that doesn't know, 2 years ago, me and another co-investigator, Carl Jobst, who you probably know of, worked together to basically unmask a charitable issue that we found, right? Where the completionist was stacking money, hoarding money, taking money in through various events that he himself ran, such as Indieland. He took that money in, saying that it was going to go to X and Y organization. Turns out it was sitting apparently in a bank account waiting to be sent off, collecting dust, losing its value to inflation, yada yada yada. Now, of course, obviously, we had investigated this 2 years ago, broke the story, and obviously, you know, the money ended up getting donated, $600,000 at least. And yeah, we thought the story had kind of ended over there. But of course, it didn't. A month ago, Gerard uploads a video called You Deserve Answers. Now, initially, I was going to probably respond to this in a few days, but I actually didn't know this video was uploaded until Carl had actually told me about it. I think it was probably like a day after it was uploaded. I had no understanding that this bomb dropped.
And I am still absolutely confident that the accusations of fraud and embezzlement will be proven false. However, even if we never broke the law, serious moral mistakes were still made by myself and the foundation. The open hand took far too long to donate. We never explained why it took so long until after everyone called us out. And I lied about this for all of Indieland's years, both knowingly in 2023 and unknowingly in all the years before.
So immediately from this clip, I was like, all right, I guess he's admitting that there were some serious moral failings to be found. And a lot of that reporting that me and Carl did was pretty much resolved from this, or was pretty much like proven correct from this statement right here. But throughout the course of this 45-minute long video, the lies and misrepresentation of this entire investigation gets pretty bad. And one of the reasons I'm making this video is because I was one of the principal investigators talking about this. And also, he really mischaracterizes and calls into questions our ethics. And I really feel like he took this opportunity of, you know, controversy against Carl and myself as a way to jump in and sort of try and get off the train of cancellation that he was on. Now, before we go into this and dissect this piece by piece, I think in order to show the audience this is a worse response than his first response, I want to go through his list of evidence, okay? So inside here, he provides this Google Drive of citations, so the archive of uploads, financial records and documentation for Indieland, research. So all right, okay, as long as I don't see like a fucking autopsy report, let's see what's actually in here. So let's go to Archive of Uploads. Actually, it's the entirety of mine and Carl's videos uploaded for the world to watch. Okay, let's go to the financial records and statements. So he's got what appears to be the AFTD Open Hand Foundation progress update, which is basically a little leaflet that he received showcasing, I guess, where the money is being sent to. This was sent on July of 2024, long after the story had broke, and some of that money was actually donated. Okay, let's look at Indieland revenue and expenses. Wow, look at this Fiverr-ass document. Of course, he provided a bunch of numbers, which we'll get into a little bit later on why I actually think these numbers are complete and utter bullshit. But he also provides operating expenses for the Open Hand Foundation. He actually shows the expenses incurred from Indieland. I just love when you give me one entire number without actually breaking down what the fuck these numbers mean. But you know what? Honestly, anybody could put together an absolute a spreadsheet like this, right? I mean, anybody could title it whatever they wanted. As long as, you know, there are no actual supporting pieces of evidence or documents, how the fuck are we supposed to prove these numbers are real or not? Again, these are questions that I think the audience should be asking. But when he uploaded this video, there was actually a lot of fanfare. Wow, you really owned the fucking Indian guy and the Australian speedrunning connoisseur over the internet. But of course, he also uploaded a third document, the Notice of Audit, that was provided by the state of California. Again, we can actually read this down the road. So he provided 3 documents. I would say 2 of which really don't even fucking matter all that much, except for really debunking. And the third one we'll get into a little bit. But if you go to the actual research section, it's painfully obvious that the completionist spent a whole year basically looking up the greatest hits of mine and Carl's controversies. So for my section, he brings up my tweets, which are all the tweets that are germane to this actual investigation, which, whatever, okay? I'm glad that you figured out how to screenshot. Video descriptions. Ooh, he's got some pinned comments. Check out the newest podcast episodes. Sterling research, my friend. Brilliant. Ooh, Reddit posts on the conspiracy theories that are spread on the Completionist Reddit, which I don't own, Carl doesn't own, nobody has anything to do with, but we'll get into it. Primary source of allegations. So he brings up Carl's and mine like videos, which he titles up all the views. So again, I don't know what the purpose of that is, but again, sterling research. For Carl, however, he brings up a whole litany of controversies. Billy Mitchell lawsuit, Discord chats, past controversies, pickup artists, video descriptions. Yeah, I feel like he really has a bone to pick with Carl over here, but again, you might be wondering, what do any of our controversies have to do with facts and logic? Again, ladies and gentlemen, I like to come across these videos with actual receipts. So for the first time, I do implore that if you're watching this video, please put it on a second monitor if you have to, but pay attention because unlike Gerard, I'm going to put up things on the screen that actually refute his dogshit points and strengthen mine. So let's go into this. Now, at the time we covered the Open Hand Foundation, one of the most important things about it was obviously it is a charity. The Open Hand Foundation is a charity that Gerard the Completionist had ran. This foundation was actually built from him, his family, his dad, all in memory of his late mother who had passed away with frontotemporal dementia, right? FTD. Now, the thing about it is he decided to lie blatantly about the status of his organization. Listen to this.
As a final note, I want to add that many online have noticed that the Open Hand Foundation has entered into a delinquency status with the IRS. Carl Jobst has run with this, saying that this is further proof that Open Hand did not comply with the law. In reality, the Open Hand's legal counsel was instructed by the Department of Justice to withhold their tax filings until the investigation was concluded. This delinquency status is the charity equivalent of an unpaid parking ticket and gets cleared whenever Open Hand files a specific form, which they've already taken care of. As a result, this delinquency status has been corrected and is actually explicit proof that my family and I fully complied with the investigation and truly have nothing to hide.
Okay, so there's a lot of things mentioned over there. Now, immediately he starts bringing up things on the screen that really have no, that really he misrepresents blatantly. So it makes me wonder if the audience that watches The Completionist is maybe clinically like sane or something, or maybe they have no understanding of how to read, but I'll read for you. The Open Hand Foundation, as Carl had posted on one of the Reddits that were focusing on this investigation, has now been classified as delinquent by the Office of the Attorney General. They are delinquent because they have failed to file the required tax form. That means they may not legally engage in any conduct that requires registration with the DOJ, i.e. soliciting charitable funds. Despite this fact, they're still soliciting donations through their upcoming golf tournament later this year. Now, obviously, the next thing is this charity definition, which, again, just read it on screen. You can see that it just says every charitable corporation, unincorporated association, and trustee doing business in California is required to annually renew its registration. Registrations must report annually by filing RRF1. The failure to renew the registration will lead to the organization as being listed as delinquent. Again, he just brought up a definition or, again, a point of what happens when you fail to actually renew it. But in the clip, he's talking about how you filled this form that apparently corrects it behind the scenes. But he never really shows that definition or proves it. Again, you have to read and actually comprehend what's being shown on the screen instead of just taking the guy's word for it. Now, Gerard decided to blatantly misrepresent what the fuck was going on there. There's actually so much wrong in this statement that the reason I started this video off with this is to just show you how easily disprovable this fucking sack of shit really is. So I'm going to explain really quickly what he said. So he said that, of course, if you're reading this, the delinquency status has been corrected and is actually explicit proof. Now, how can you verify if Gerard is actually telling the truth? Well, open up a new tab. You can go to whatever search engine you prefer, and you can go search up Office of the Attorney General. California Charity Lookup. So again, if you go over here, you can go to OAGCA.gov, Charities Content Info, click right over here, and through their search tool, which is easily accessible by going to search by agency or the registry search tool right over here, and inside organization name, you can type in Open Hand Foundation. As you've already seen, I've done it. Hit that old search button, and the bottom organization is the one that belongs primarily to Gerard. Now you can see, as of me literally recording this video, which it should be edited and going live, like, literally in the next couple days, it is delinquent. It probably will still be delinquent by the time I upload this fucking video. But that doesn't even really matter in this situation. So if you actually go looking at this organization, you can see that it verifiably is him. It's actually delinquent because it's incomplete filing. In fact, the IRS 990 form is required in this situation. So you might be wondering, okay, well, what is the actual problem? First off, he said that it's not delinquent. It verifiably is delinquent. And if you actually go to the bottom over here, the latest posting is this RCT 451. Again, you can click that, open it up, check that PDF file for yourself. You can see that this is the Open Hand Foundation. And inside the Open Hand Foundation, I'm not just presenting this, I'm going to read it for you. This is a delinquency notice and a warning of assessment of penalties and late fees and suspension or revocation of registered status. This was posted May 2nd, 2025. And if you actually look over here, they even reference legal code in this situation. An organization that is listed as delinquent is not in good standing and is prohibited from engaging in conduct for which registration is required, including soliciting or dispersing charitable funds. And here they provide California Code Registration Title 11, Section 312, which we'll open separately real quickly, but let's go back here. The organization may also be subject to penalties, yada, yada, yada. Its registration may be suspended or revoked by the registry. Once you submit the delinquent records, you will be notified of the amount of any late fees that are owed. So immediately when you look up that exact title, code, and registration, it belongs to registration must be in good standing to operate or solicit. A person or entity subject to the registration requirements of the Act must be registered and in good standing with the Registry of Charities and Fundraisers to operate or solicit for charitable purposes in the state of California. A registration that is delinquent, suspended, or revoked is not in good standing. See, delinquent is not in good standing. And what are they registered as? Delinquent. Of course, there's no secret behind the scenes update. That literally is the public record that anybody donating to this charitable organization should publicly be able to see. And it is prohibited from engaging in conduct for which registration is required, including, but not limited to, solicitation for charitable purposes. A person or entity subject to a cease and desist order is not in good standing. And of course, if you look very carefully at how brazenly terrible this organization is, you can see that on October 9, 2025, which is actually one of the reasons why me and Carl waited to release our videos, is to see if they were brazen enough to run this actual charitable organization. This event, this golf event, while they were delinquent. Look at that. They even got some photos from the 2025 PBD Convenience Cup Challenge, where they actually do have people registered in their organization. The organization that goes to the Open Hand Foundation? Boy, I wonder what their status is. I mean, you can fucking look it up for yourself. So again, when somebody like this blatantly just misrepresents the story, it makes me wonder what else this scumbag piece of shit is willing to lie about. But we'll go into that real quickly. I also want to reiterate that, look, at the end of the day, there's going to be three people that you probably don't like. It's me, Carl, and Gerard. And, you know, there's an obvious chance that all three of us can be complete assholes. But the thing is, we're coming with facts and receipts. And I think for people that are uncritically looking at this and just trying to pick a side of which internet personality they like the most, remember one thing, okay? You can either believe him at his word when he says that, you know, they filled some, I guess, forum where, I guess, this whole delinquency status was treated like this unpaid parking ticket, which, you know, I guess could be one thing, or you can actually, you know, use your own brain. Again, I'm not being a conspiracy theorist in this. You can go directly to the government site, verify this information for yourself, and see that what he is saying does not match up with the objective truth that one can look at from the government. So unless the government is fucking lying or not updating these, you know, websites, which would be a whole different controversy, much, much difficult to prove, or, you know, he's just full of shit, which in my opinion is the most likely point. I also decided to go to their actual website, the Open Hand Foundation, and it turns out that the Open Hand Foundation is still as of this moment, requesting donations. In fact, I even did donate some money, to which, unlike Gerard, I will show you a bank statement from me showing that I have sent $5 to this charity that I believe legally is not allowed to disburse these funds. I mean, why would they keep this shit operating? You would think that they wouldn't be brazen enough to A, run these things possible. Now, obviously, look, throughout my time researching, I think that there is an understanding that sometimes you can believe that things, sometimes you shouldn't attribute malice to things that could possibly be, again, just somebody's bumbling ignorance. But I think, given the rest of the things we're about to see, I have no reason not to believe after 2 years that there isn't a malicious component, personally, inside this entire story. So let's go all the way to the beginning of Gerard. The reason I showed you this, again, is to show you that Gerard straight up lied. He misrepresented and downplayed this actual delinquency and said it was something like an unpaid parking ticket. Dog, I don't know how fucking stupid you are, but this is actually more like your license getting suspended. It's actually something that I brought up to Carl right there. It's where your license gets suspended. You're not allowed to operate a vehicle. So to go to the beginning of this video, he makes another misrepresentation into the evidence that he provides in the beginning of this video that I showed.
Two content creators named Carl Jobst and Mutahar Anas made videos detailing on how my family's charity, the Open Hand Foundation, had not made a contribution since its founding, despite numerous fundraisers and misleading statements by myself about charitable partners. Within a matter of days, and before I really had any opportunity to present any information of my own, the narrative had shifted. I was being accused of embezzlement and charity fraud, with Carl and Mutahar directing their viewers to report my family's charity to the authorities, prompting a criminal investigation by the Department of Justice.
Now, this is available purposely for us to read. This is his notice of audit from the California DOJ. So this is, again, the Office of the Attorney General has a duty to supervise charitable organizations under California Corporation Code Section 5250, and the Government Code Sections 12580 through 12599.8. One of the ways the office performs this duty is by conducting audits of charitable organizations. In this regard, please send the below listed documentation and information to the undersigned within 30 days of this letter. Unless otherwise stated, documents and information produced in response to the below requests are to cover the periods from 2014 to the present. Please send copies other than original documents. So again, it is more administrative than it actually appears to be criminal in this situation. So again, for him to say that he's being criminally investigated, which again, I don't know if he is or he isn't, but it's not something that even the DOJ would bring up and tell you. Like, why the fuck would they tell you that you're being criminally investigated? When in history has that ever been a thing where the DOJ has notified their target, yeah, you're being investigated. Must be on your best behavior there, pal. Again, reading through this entire situation, it really is just a audit in this situation, just like a procedural thing, more so than a criminal thing in this scenario, even a civil thing necessarily. But again, because it's from the Department of Justice, I guess it makes it look a little spookier to the audience. It's almost a situation of taking a little nugget of truth, a kernel of truth, and blowing it up to astronomical proportions. If you look at the actual corporation code from California, the corporation is subject to, at all times, to examination by the AG on behalf of the state to ascertain the condition of its affairs and to what extent, if at all, it fails to comply with trusts which it has assumed or has departed from the purposes of which it is formed. In case of any such failure to departure, the Attorney General may institute, in the name of the state, the proceeding necessary to correct the non-compliance or departure. Now, even for example, looking through this entire actual legal code, which you can look for yourself, you can just Google this up if you want to. For instance, Government Code 12599.6, for instance, goes out and tells you charitable organizations and commercial fundraisers for charitable purposes shall not misrepresent the purpose of the charitable organization or the nature, purpose, or beneficiary of a solicitation. So this might sound like criminal to you, but again, basic legal research will show you that this is actually not even a criminal code. Basically, from what I've been able to read in the legal code over here, according to Government 12599 Section F, it says it shall be unlawful for any commercial fundraiser for charitable purposes to solicit funds in this state for charitable purposes unless the commercial fundraiser for charitable purposes is complied with the registration or annual renewing and financial reporting requirements of this article. Failure to comply with these registration or annual renewal and financial reporting requirements shall be grounds for injunction against solicitation in the state for charitable purposes and other civil remedies provided by law. And again, look, there are other documents here too. For instance, Title 11 Law, Division 1, Chapter 15, the Attorney General Regulations regarding administrative enforcement of the supervision of trustees and fundraisers for charitable purposes Act. So 999.6, violations of Government Code Section 12580 and whatnot. So of course you can see over here the Attorney General may take administrative action for violation of Section 12580 of the Government Code, including but not limited to refuse to register or revoke or suspend the registration of a charitable corporation, trustee, commercial fundraiser, yada yada yada. Section 2 is issue a cease and desist order against any person or entity for reasons specified in Section 12591.1 and yada yada. Or number 3, impose a penalty on any person or entity for reasons specified in Section 12591. So again, penalty, from my understanding, is usually just monetary in the situation. When an administrative action is taken, the AG shall provide a written notice specifying the reasons for the actions. An appeal of the Attorney General's actions must be filed within 30 days of the date of the written notice. So yeah, this is all government procedural stuff from what I'm able to read. Now, of course, obviously, look, is there possibly a criminal investigation? I don't know that, and I don't actually believe Gerard or anybody would know that aside from the investigating body. In this case, it would be the state of California's Department of Justice. And typically, from my understanding, they don't normally notify their targets about any investigations on them until, of course, they're ready to slap them on the face with charges or whatever they deem necessary. Now, the reason why this is important for me to bring up is that Gerard basically brings up this document assuming that nobody is going to read it on the screen or look even slightly deep into it. This was maybe 5 minutes of Google researching into this document. But understandably, people who would just listen to him be like, okay, wow, it's a criminal investigation. It's super duper serious. Even though he hasn't provided any evidence that there is an active criminal investigation. Now, there easily could be. But the reason why I believe he sets this up is so that down the road, if there are penalties and, there isn't anything criminal down the road, he can just say, listen, guys, I didn't do anything wrong, even though what he's showing is not even in the realm of what he's sort of fluffing up to his audience. There could actually be penalties, and some of them might just be monetary. Some of them may not be there at all. But remember, this is a man that admitted earlier in this video when we were watching it, he knew full well that he was making, deceptive statements, knowing that money hadn't left his charity, and that he knows that there were severe moral failings.
However, even if we never broke the law, serious moral mistakes were still made by myself and the foundation. The open hand took far too long to donate. We never explained why it took so long until after everyone called us out. And I lied about this for all of Indieland's years, both knowingly in 2023 and unknowingly in all the years before.
Now, do I take him at his word for all this? Absolutely not. Again, 2 years ago, I would have been like, sure, maybe the buffoon might have made a dumb mistake, but at this point, I think he's nothing more than a malicious buffoon. So do I believe it? No. It's not, personally, no. But even if you take his statement currently at face value, he knew that he was making, misstatements. He knew ahead of time, long before me and Carl had even exposed this, that things, were wrong. So again, it's baffling that he wants to even try victimizing himself just a little bit in the story. Now, at the time when me and Carl had covered the video, I just used like a charity fraud definition as sort of like a catch-all term. But here, Carl had actually sent me something in the past day about the actual penal code. And one that he brought up to me was actually quite interesting. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I implore people to kind of understand or try to realize what it is. Maybe a lawyer can correct me. Maybe a lawyer can say this is good, solid stuff. But to me, it seems pretty decently solid. So Chapter 8, False Personation and Cheat, Section 532D. Any person who solicits or attempts to solicit or receives money or property of any kind for a charitable, being in this case the Open Hand Foundation, religious or eleemosynary purpose, and who directly or indirectly makes, utters, or delivers, either orally or in writing, an unqualified statement of fact concerning the purpose or organization for which the money or property is solicited or received, or concerning the cost and expense of solicitation or the manner in which the money or property or any part thereof is to be used, which statement is in fact false and was made, uttered, or delivered by that person either willfully and with knowledge of its falsity or negligently without due consideration of those facts, which by the use of ordinary care he or she should have known is guilty of a misdemeanor and is punishable by imprisonment in the county jail for not more than 1 year or a fine exceeding $5,000. So what part of this necessarily is really important? Well, for one, we should probably talk about the unqualified statements of fact.
We are raising money for dementia research in honor of my late mom, trying to help folks who've been impacted by dementia, working with organizations like USF, FTD Association of America, Alzheimer's Association of America, and so many more.
So the thing about this statement and what you have to catch up for is when he mentions these organizations by name, right? Now, what makes this, from my understanding legally, if it's unqualified, is that there was no disclaimer, right? Like, he never at one point was just going like, yeah, by the way, we have like plans going forward. Maybe it might not work. Maybe it won't. Like, there's no disclaimer there. It's just very much a statement that is made. Now, while there's no hardline definition, from my understanding, regarding the unqualified statement of fact, generally, according to the courts, it is just considered usually a representation that is presented as objectively true, not as an opinion or estimate. So generally, you're making a definite factual claim, which it seems like that claim wasn't true because, as we had known, the money had never left the account, and they didn't even have a hardline set charity to donate to, up until literally when me and Carl had basically asked or questioned Gerard and the organization about their charitable contributions. And, you know, I would imagine that as he's sitting over there, he knows that these statements are actually false as they're being made, given that he just admitted in this video that he had knowingly, like, made false statements, even when he knew and ran an event knowing well what the nature of the charity was or what was actually going on behind the scenes. So again, it's just insane to me that he's going to make this entire response video and not really think it all the way through. But again, I'm not a lawyer, okay? Again, I'm just reading the law as close as I can. And the thing is, ultimately, if anybody wants to refute this, they very much can. But I do personally believe that his actions are now beginning to fall under at least this one point. Now, in Carl's video, he does actually talk a little bit more in depth about other laws that he himself is bringing up that I'm not going to jump into. And this is where I kind of want to make a little slight pivot and talk about a claim that was being made about my content that I just don't think is true. And that is the claim of embezzlement. Now, throughout this entire investigation over 2 years, I noticed that for a lot of people, they threw out the claim that I guess we accused of embezzlement. Now, obviously, Carl and I were a bit split when it came to our reporting. I would say that Carl was a little bit on the heavy-handed side. I mean, that's just the way that he presents a story. But I also do believe personally that Carl is somebody that presents a solid amount of receipts and factual understanding, as much as I think anybody reasonably can for researching this in his process. But obviously for me, because I was really getting my stuff checked legally, I didn't want to make assertions or claims that I couldn't 100% verify at that time. Now, embezzlement's a pretty serious claim, and I remember at the time when Gerard had mentioned embezzlement as if it was like a super duper serious accusation, I went to my original videos, and I actually found the only claim of embezzlement that I had, or the only mention of it rather, inside my video. And so I want to play that entire clip in context and then discuss it as it pertains to this whole investigation. So when we looked into the actual filings and we looked into this event itself and those various photo streams where we saw all those sponsors and tiers listed, unfortunately, adding those figures up, we don't actually see it accurately reflected in the public filings, which, ladies and gentlemen, might I remind you, is not necessarily legal, okay? To understand if all the money isn't accounted for in a charity when you are raising money for the charity, the government considers that to be illegal. That can be fraudulent. That could be embezzlement. That could be mishandling of funds, which is a severe illegal no-no. Now, obviously, I think there's definitely a claim that you can make where I was saying that, yeah, for sure, absolutely, when it came to him committing fraud, I do personally believe that there was a fraud aspect inside the story. But when it came to embezzlement, for instance, that was the only mention that I could see. And it, of course, when you add in the context that I was talking about a charity or the events where when you started adding up numbers, or I guess as some people saying, doing the napkin math, so to speak, you know, the figures were not aligning correctly. They weren't reporting right. So it didn't look like the money was accounted properly. And sometimes that can lead to fraud, that can lead to mishandling of money, or that could be possibly embezzlement, right? There's a lot of ways, you know, the government who's investigating it can take it. There's a lot of ways that anybody who's reasonably looking into a story can kind of go out that way. Was that a hardline accusation? No, not at all. But again, I don't expect people to be applying proper contextual understanding of the story. There's also just a lot to really grab. So part of this video, and the reason it's going to be so long, is that we have to sort of recontextualize and we have to sort of bring people back to the objective truth and the timeline of this whole story, something that Gerard is completely incapable of doing. Now, there was a couple other things, legal statutes that Carl had sent me, and I highly implore whenever he gets his video, it'll probably be out by now, like, it'll probably be out, like, probably a day, this video will come out, like, a day or two after his. But if you watch his video, he has a couple more legal statutes that he touches upon that I'm not going to necessarily go into, but again, that's for his video to watch, so you should definitely check out Carl's video. But again, I want to go into another situation, his claim with the organization UCSF.
It was around this point that I realized that I was in way over my head. I had just lost my job at G4, and finances were a complete mess all around for myself and my company. I was scrambling to get the Completionist restructured with new ideas and a new tone, and I was practically traveling or doing some work event almost every single week, almost the entire year. But everything was up in the air, and all of it was on me, all at once. And on top of all this was the news that I now had to fix a problem that had been unknowingly brewing for several years.
Now again, the thing about Gerard that's really funny over here is that, again, if you take this statement at its value, he's almost trying to like paint himself as sort of like this unknowing victim, like, guys, I had all these responsibilities. You know, I had to misrepresent this charity. I had to misrepresent these statements. And, you know, eventually this problem is just brewing the whole time. What problem was that? A problem that me and Carl didn't even bring up the entire time? Like, you knew ahead of time there was something wrong, and you still went through and ran your operation, thinking that, you know, nobody was going to be the wiser. Had you been completely honest and truthful about the charity that, you know, you guys were completely mishandling, let's be completely real here, I think things could have went a different way. Sure, would people have been pissed then? But at least it would have been better than how it would have ended up blowing up, especially with the response that he had given.
However, even at this point, I couldn't just do whatever I wanted. And this is where the real conflict started. I tried my best to express how upset I was, how upset all of you would rightfully be, and that this could cost me and so many people who worked with me everything we had created and built together, and I was simply brushed aside. I had learned the hard way that the charity world moves at a glacial pace, and I've been going around touting all these organizations and all the good we'll be doing for many years, only for all of it to be a bunch of empty promises. Even after I stepped up, my best efforts to donate as fast as possible would never be good enough, as every decision I wanted to make now had to be approved by a long list of people on both the open hand side and the potential benefactors that I had been speaking with. So I feel that some context on my family might be helpful right here. I'm the youngest of 5 in a first-generation Lebanese immigrant household. My dad has always loomed large in every aspect of my life, and that absolutely extended to my own experiences with the Open Hand Foundation, and at times, even my own business. The expectations were that I should have been an engineer, or I should have been a lawyer. Instead, I'm a video producer who plays video games on the internet for a living. If you ever watched the Completionist live show from a few years ago, then all of this should sound pretty familiar to you. I did not have the final call on any major decisions when it came to the Open Hand and its finances. I was one of many people in charge.
So obviously, you know, a lot of this comes down now to him, again, may I remind you, admitting in this video that he knew for a period of time before me and Carl had ever exposed this, that something was wrong, that the charity was not actually distributing the funds to the organizations that it was stating. Now, here's the thing. I get it. Obviously, this is not just his charity. It's a charity involving his dad and, you know, his various other siblings, right? So there are votes that one needs to take. Now, here's the thing. Being that he was a former director of this charity, he had a responsibility legally to be on the up and up. And you could say that, oh, maybe he wasn't there. Maybe then he's not meeting his actual responsibilities, the baseline responsibilities for operating a charity. Now, the thing is, he starts doing this whole, like, daddy issues thing where, you know, I'm the first generation, like, immigrant of a Lebanese American family. Here's the thing. I'm a first-gen immigrant. In fact, if anything, I am, in fact, the immigrant, okay? All right? I was born abroad, came here. And the thing is, I get it. His dad sounds like a proper fucking asshole. And don't get me wrong, his brother, Jacques, I think is slightly a slimier piece of shit than Gerard. But then again, I don't care if your dad is overbearing or if he's like sort of this patriarch. At the end of the day, you are a man as old as I am, okay? And when it comes to operating and running a business, these are things that I'm sure Gerard knows. These are things Carl knows. These are things that I know. Even if you just took the enterprise of our YouTube channels as a sole fact in that comparison. So the thing is, if they're going to run this charity, you should have, at your own behest, not done Indieland, right? That was under your corporation. That was under your company. That was under TOVG. So you didn't really have to go and run this charitable event knowing that the charity wasn't exactly meeting its responsibilities. Again, when you really analyze the story and the statements and the parties involved and just the basic facts of this case, then even his statement doesn't make sense. If anything, it just sounds like he's really keen on throwing the dad, maybe even the siblings, basically under the bus, if it means that he can sort of skate by, right? He wants you to really, he's trying to be like almost a hero, a victim of the story. I get it. He's taken some responsibility in the situation, and I almost do applaud that. But then again, when I see the sliminess over here, this is not coming from somebody that is genuinely apologetic or somebody that genuinely wants to provide you any form of information. This is somebody that, basically has taken a hiatus, and now he needs to make some money. Maybe he's in on the outs with it. Maybe he's on the outs with his family. I don't really know. I'm not going to care to speculate on that. But he needs to come back and earn some living, okay? Earn some money. And this is sort of like a almost attempt at saving face. Really, like, I think Carl pretty much put it best for me when we were investigating this again, is that really this is more Gerard capitalizing on the controversies that Carl had gotten into, that I had gotten into, than actually providing fair answers. Which is fine, I get it. Sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the fucking nail. But I refuse to be the fucking nail getting hammered by this goddamn idiot, okay? Simple as that. So again, really analytically think about a story. Even if the family members are total pieces of shit and they've basically voted him out, right? He didn't have to run charitable events knowing full well the nature of how bad things had gotten. He could have just completely stalled that event. He could have just said, hey, listen, we're going to skip Indieland for this year. And then he could have kept working behind the scenes to make sure that money is donated. And when it is, he could have probably announced that to the public, maybe explained things in grander detail then, but not actually raise money and make statements he shouldn't have made, even at the time when he knows that things were wrong, right? Like, it's stuff that, again, it's easy to get confused in this situation because it's been 2 years and the story is kind of pretty massive, right, in terms of what you have to know. But it's easy to get gaslit. But I refuse to be gaslit because I was one of the principal investigators in the story. Now, mind you, when it came to a message that, Carl had received, remember, to understand the timeline of this investigation, Carl had actually emailed the Open Hand Foundation ahead of time in the situation. Because obviously, if you're going to be covering a story, you probably do want to get every side. So Carl had sent out an email inquiring about the situation. To which, even in their response email, they had said, while we understand the necessity of due diligence in charitable engagements, the insinuation of wrongdoing on the part of the Open Hand Foundation is both unwarranted and unfounded. We conduct our operations within the bounds of legal and ethical standards. So in this statement alone, they're saying, bro, there's nothing wrong going on. But here he's admitting that there was a big problem brewing in the back end, okay? I didn't know it. We were doing things wrong unknowingly, and then I did things wrong knowingly. Like, homie, what the fuck are you saying? Did a lawyer check this at all? Probably not. Now remember, he says the word like, he says that, hey, we don't want people to think that there's like empty promises going out. Bro, in your Indieland event, you were basically saying that you were directly working. You were working with these you were naming these organizations directly. There wasn't even a disclaimer that was given, okay? That is the issue.
We are raising money for dementia research in honor of my late mom, trying to help folks who've been impacted by dementia, working with organizations like USF, FTD Association of America, Alzheimer's Association of America, and so many more.
Now, he also mentions that charities work at this glacial pace, so it took them a while for them to actually stack this kind of money. And of course, this is where he comes with the excuse he's running for in this video, where apparently they were wanting to stack just crazy amounts of money. Like they wanted to have one giant donation that they could send in a restricted fashion.
However, after we finished our 5th show in November of 2022, I spoke with my family about all the good we were doing and I really wanted to get a representative from one of our charity partners to come and speak at Indieland 2023. Only then did I learn that the Open Hand Foundation had never made a contribution since its founding, and there were no official partners. All the money was sitting there, untouched and accounted for, ready to be donated. But at the time, there was a massive disagreement between myself and my family. I personally thought it was important that the money be donated right away. Meanwhile, my family's perspective was very different than mine. They had been negotiating with several organizations to establish contracts to take a bulk sum of money as a restricted donation.
Now, this is an interesting point, and honestly, I probably wouldn't have even made these videos from my angle if he had just told me any of this in our initial Discord call, which, as you remember, has been publicly available for 2 years, but one snippet I dug out of it was really interesting. So they've got the story about a restricted lump sum donation, but listen to this portion of the Discord call.
Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to ask for forgiveness. I'm not trying to hide this, but what would you guys like me to do? Because I want to do right by everyone involved on my side, and I want to absolve myself of this as best I can, and I know I can't. And, you guys are some of the biggest creators in the space. When you guys whatever you guys will say, this is going to follow me for the rest of my life. And I just want to be able to do right by you guys and by my community and by my family at this point. And I just want, I literally am about to donate all this money today. And prior to that, earlier this week and the week before, and I've just been sitting here crippled trying to figure out the best way to handle this, because I felt like if I donated the money the minute you guys emailed me, it'd be a situation of, well, he's trying to hide it and he's admitting guilt by doing that. And I never felt that way, but I understand completely that you guys could easily argue that, and it would just make me look more like a scumbag. And, I just want to, I want to do right by you guys and what you think. When you guys got the email and I said, please tell us about benefactors, that was genuine, because I haven't found a benefactor that I'm completely happy with. And
so literally, as this call is happening, he's telling us on the call that he literally has not found a benefactor that he's actually happy with, or anybody that would be a beneficiary to their, generous grant. At this moment in time, he could have immediately told us, yeah, we have a restricted donation goal. Now, granted, it's still unethical that you haven't relayed that anywhere, but again, the story just keeps changing all the fucking time. And the thing is, it's easy to get gaslit in this entire story and not know what's going on, but you have to really go through the weeds again and look through the facts of this case, the actual, timeline, and see for yourself that realistically, at the end of the day, based on how he relayed this to us, he was more worried about his image, right? Which I guess understandably so. We are all public figures. That's something that, we all give a shit about. But I always really, and especially now, think that the whole charity thing was very much an afterthought. Okay, this charity was more a vanity thing to me. At least it appears more like a vanity project to me. But again, let's go back to the facts of this, right? Now, of course, he mentions that, look, there's a lot of problems that have gone on. He brings up the idea that, listen, we I got to go through just layers of communication. He never once in this entire video or in his Dropbox or Google Document Drive or whatever throws any of these emails in, right? Which is funny, because if you actually go back to the call we had, he does in fact admit that he had these long line of recorded communications.
Did anyone tell you that the money was going somewhere before then? Were you being misled?
No. No one told me anything. I assumed that it was all going to a charity, and I assumed incorrectly.
Okay, so you still thought it was going to the UCSF?
Whether it's UCSF or a partner that's not listed on our website, because we don't have any other benefactors currently. That's why I was like, well, they're taking care of it, but nothing was ever brought to my attention. I just knew that conversations were happening between Alzheimer's Association of America, AFTD Foundation, UCSF started a new organization, I think called Bluefin or Blue Group, which is supposed to be their 501c part of their organization. So I know I have a paper trail of us talking to other organizations as early as 2020 and 2021 in an attempt to pay them what they were owed. And most of the conversations we had from
some of the bigger orgs like Alzheimer's, they were like, look, if you're not going to pay more than 6 figures or 6+ figures of what they asked for, then you're just going to waste it. So the goal on the back end for my family that I've been told is like, we're just going to raise a bunch of money and then give it to one org and like make a bigger impact rather than just giving smaller donations that don't move the needle.
So you're telling me this scumbag can go through all of Carl's dirty history, catalog that, and put it into a Google Drive, but he just can't go to his Gmail or whatever mail service he uses, Control F, and find the actual communication and email threads? Like, you're telling me you can't find a single email to put up on the screen and mention it? He said that 2 years ago in a fucking call, and he can't bring that up now? And also, I wanted to include the part where they do talk about the donation being stacked, or at least, something be made that could push the needle even further. And while he, didn't mention the word restricted right there and then, the ultimate reality of it is I still don't buy the story even after his explanations, because ultimately they didn't really have a partner decided at that moment yet. It was just keep throwing money into this entire account until, I guess, at some point, whenever that may be, we'll find somebody, discuss it with them, and have a big restricted donation. And here's the thing, I would actually believe all of this if he could provide one exact, just any email, any recorded correspondence with any of these mentioned entities. Remember, there are many groups that they talk to, and they can provide, again, one of these conversation threads, which I guess they've had recorded for years now. They couldn't provide any of these to show that, yes, the ultimate goal at the end of the day is to give you $1 million, whatever it may be, down, or a large lump sum of money, so we can move that needle further. At some point, okay, you got to tell your dad as an adult to stop fucking you in the ass. Okay, I get it. Family is tough. That's why I don't mix my family with business, all right? Simple as fucking that. But the thing about it is, it's not necessarily your dad's fault. It's not even your dipshit brother's fault. You are also a director, which means that you have responsibilities to at least ensure that this money was sent. You had a responsibility to know everything that was going on in the situation and to make sure you weren't, during your times, leading up and making false statements. The fact that this guy knew for a year and still decided to withhold it from you shows that he's not really somebody that is to be trusted in this situation. He is a poor steward of this donated money, and ultimately, at the end of the day, he has a lion's share of that responsibility being one of the directors. I get it. Family fucking sucks. I'm sure your dad sucks. I'm sure your brother sucks. I'm sure a lot of people suck. I'm sure a lot of people in your family fucking suck, okay? I get it. But it still doesn't absolve you of the sins made here.
The expectations were that I should have been an engineer or I should have been a lawyer.
Your dad wanted the E word? The lawyer? Oh no. Oh, your dad wanted you to be something more than a gamer, dude. Therefore, it's okay to misrepresent what's happening in my organization. Like, really? Like, come on, are we seriously doing this? Like, come on.
I did not have the final call on any major decisions when it came to the open hand and its finances. I was one of many people in charge.
Again, I get it, all right? Family sucks. And, his dad seems like a real unbearable asshole to be around, I'm pretty sure. And look, I don't care what your family wanted you or what you wanted you to be. Look, at the end of the day, you're a man that made a successful YouTube channel, therefore turned it into a successful enterprise. Probably overblew it with the amount of people you had to hire, but that's a whole separate story. At the end of the day, you are a responsible adult, okay? And look, at the end, it doesn't matter, okay? You did something pretty successful. You should be proud of it. You should, not take what your family said. Look, if my dad came up to me and said, "Beta, I wish you were this instead of that," I would probably have to tell my dad, I'm like, "Dad, listen, I'm a responsible adult that's doing pretty successful in my own life, so, it is what it is." But my dad would never do that, so frankly, I don't have that understanding. I don't have that, connection. I don't have those daddy issues. But again, the daddy issues do not, they don't absolve you from the fact that as a adult, as somebody that was a former director to this foundation, and as somebody that knew well after 2022 that, well before me and Carl had ever asked you about this, you knew the money was sitting in an account. Why did you choose to run an event under your own organization, right? Like, you as an adult should at least have the autonomy over your own company. Otherwise, are you even running your own organization? Like, these are questions that I think anybody should be asking. But again, the audience, what he's doing is he's emotionally playing to the audience, and he's painting himself as this big victim in this highly patriarchal organization. Brother, Again, if you buy this, I think I might have to question your mentality amongst his. But yeah, again, really just critically think for a second and realize that, look, this is simple deflection rather than, complete ownership of the actions taken here.
So when I learned the truth, I made it my goal that no matter what happened, the money had to get donated. There was no other outcome that I would allow.
But the reality of it is that you knew ahead of time things were wrong, and then you still went into your own event, Indieland, and made misleading statements, okay? You're not the hero of the story. You're not even you're not somebody that is you're not somebody that should be sympathized with, okay? I feel bad that your relationship with your dad is that of a tyrant, a dictator, and the dictated in this situation. But that's not anybody's problem. You shouldn't have went on stage and on stream. You should have just canceled the events outright and, probably been upfront and real on your end, okay? Doesn't matter what your family says. They involved you in this situation, okay? You can feel bad for a guy, and sure, I do somewhat feel bad. I'm not going to deny that. But he's my age, okay? At some point, you have to fucking stand up for yourself, okay? You can't be a little bitch your whole life. But then again, I feel like this is just leading into the layers of manipulation in the story.
And that's where the real nasty core to all of this is. Nobody embezzled or touched any money, no crime was committed or covered up here, and the results of the Department of Justice's investigation will hopefully one day be proof of this.
No crime was committed or covered up. Homie, you just admitted that you made misleading statements knowing full well the reality of the situation behind the scenes, and you knew bad things were brewing. I mean, I just don't understand how, you should have had a lawyer watching this video. I don't get why you didn't. It makes no fucking sense. How can you say that you didn't do something wrong? These are so many contradicting statements that I'm actually surprised I or Carl have to make a video. People should just watch this and understand, wow, what a fucking piece of shit. Simple as that.
A few days later, on November 10th, I received a message from another creator, Mudahar Anas, also known as Some Ordinary Gamers. I respected and trusted Mudahar, so when he asked if I wanted to hop on a Discord call to talk about a discrepancy with some of the Open Hand Foundation's publicly available documents, I agreed, thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe we could chat this out and clear the air, no problem. Mudahar never once asked about the laws or regulations that Carl had asked about, so I had no reason to think they were collaborating together, especially since they had no prior history together online. I hopped on the call, assuming that this would just be the two of us, until my surprise, I saw Carl join. The rest of what's publicly available to all of you is essentially me having a panic attack while trying to be transparent with two creators I respected at the time, all at the behest of throwing my friends and family under several buses.
Oh man, you respected me at the time. I respected you, Mudahar. What's wrong with you? Now, I want to just kind of preface this and bring up the idea that what he's basically doing over here is invalidating. It's almost making us sound like the fucking TMZ of the internet. And to this, I'm going to also admit some of my, little faults here. Because I do definitely admit that there was something that I could have done better over here. But I am going to recontextualize that this asshole was absolutely not ambushed. So to give you an idea of what's actually gone over all over here, I want to just start off with the actual story here. Now, on November 7th, Carl sends an email to Jacques, Jacques being Gerard's brother. Thank you for the detailed response. I would greatly appreciate it if you could clarify a few things for me. Why do you have UCSF listed as a benefactor on your website? Yada, yada, yada. So again, this was sent on November 7th, and you can read it for whatever. If you want to pause the video, go ahead. That letter that Carl wrote was actually a response to this letter from the Open Hand Foundation, right? This initial correspondence. So they knew Carl had reached out. Now, this moment in time, behind the scenes, me and Carl were working on this the whole time. But of course, I decided to reach out to Gerard. So on June 21st, 2022, I was like, LMAO, we hit follow at the same time. And of course, he goes, that's crazy. Dig your stuff, man. Hope you're doing well. Your tweet on Radio Shack got recommended to me. Okay, that's great right there. So then, of course, obviously, over a year passes. November 10th comes by, to which I ask, hey man, I was wondering if you'd be free for a call. We got tipped off about a discrepancy with your guys' charity Open Hand Foundation. Just wanted to run some of the public documents with you and get your side of the story, doing due diligence here. Which, of course, obviously he responds and goes, Yeah, man, of course. I figured this was going to come up sooner rather than later, and that something huge was coming. It's been building the last couple days. I'm in the middle of meetings for the next hour or so. Would you give me a couple of hours? So he knows that something is coming up. He knows well in advance. He saw the letter even from Carl the whole time. So obviously he knows. He knows something is happening. And I do mention we got tipped off. Now, again, maybe I could have done better, and this is where I'll explain. Maybe I could have just used the word Carl here, but he makes it sound like that I had ambushed him with Carl in a call, which was absolutely not true. So of course, he then messages me later down the road. He says Discord or phone. So this is like a couple minutes later, and I said, yeah, no worries. I'm in my office all day. Discord works for me. So then he mentions he gives me his Discord tag, which I'm going to block out just because that's his Discord tag. And to which he goes, sweet, sent you a request. Let me know when you're good to call. I need a couple hours here myself. So he says, I'll let you know soon. Now again, at this point, I was kind of expecting that the call was never going to happen. And I even mentioned it back when my investigation started. I was like, listen, he's in meetings. He's probably talking to a fucking lawyer, and he's probably not going to want to say a word to me. So then, of course, he goes and says, I'm good whenever. And I said, perfect, want to call in 30. So at this moment in time at 5:19, I send this message. And he says, sure. Now, of course, at 5:43, I mentioned added you to a group chat. Calling. So, of course, at 5:43, I invite him to a GC. Now, again, I assume that being fucking gamers, he probably knows what the fuck a GC is. But I don't know, maybe Gerard is actually completely stupid and he has no idea what a GC is, but that's really difficult for me to believe, okay? But now I'm going to show you the Discord messages that I don't believe he linked in his actual, evidence thread here really quickly. So inside my communications with the completionist at 4:41 p.m., he says, hey man, I'm finishing up my meeting. I'll be available in a bit. Then, of course, at 5:06, he says, ready whenever you are. So 5:43 p.m., I say, sure, inviting you to a group chat. So, of course, 5:43, I then invite him to a actual group chat, to which that group chat starts right over here. So again, if I was just going to call him, I would have just called him on my actual, Discord. That would have just been normal. I would have just sent a call to him, which I didn't. And obviously, why would I invite you to a group chat? Why would I even mention a group chat if there wasn't another participant the whole time? Again, his claim that this is an ambush is just insane when you just basically apply some critical thinking to the story. Even if you go with the idea that he's ambushed, again, if he's going to get called in a group chat, it shows all of our bubbles. Carl's profile picture is pretty distinct. I believe it hasn't even changed. So ultimately, at the end of the day, he pressed that green button knowing full well what he was walking into. So then the call starts, which lasts 33 minutes, which is where he disconnects for the first time in that call. So then I'm like, hey, we know you're having connection issues at the moment. I think we pretty much asked all the questions we needed. It would be comfortable if you would be comfortable in writing your thoughts or a statement for us so we could just have your side to present, right? If you wanted to give us more context, whatever. Now, if you actually listen to that call, there was no ambush. He kind of sang like a canary. Now, he could say that he was in a panic attack, which is a great deflection to sort of invalidate anything that he said. I don't know if there was a fucking panic attack. I'm not going to say that I understand the synapses firing in somebody's head. That would be insane. But to say that this was an ambush is complete nonsense. For anybody that is going through a panic attack and is worried that Carl is present, and he goes, I got my phone working again, and then he immediately jumps back into the call over here. I can't hear you, stupid Discord. Totally. Guys, I'm so sorry. Give me one moment. I'm going to try something. This is super nuanced, obviously. So again, we're not sitting there kind of forcing the dude in. If you listen to the entire call, if anything, we're just letting him sing like a canary, which is the stupidest thing that he could have done, but he just does it. Now, the thing is, obviously, look, could I have probably said me and Carl are in a group chat? Sure, absolutely. But he was not ambushed in this situation. And I think it's insulting to both Carl and I, if he was just going to jump into a call with me thinking that I was going to listen to his bullshit and believe everything at face value and not press him on a few things is insanity. And it's also insulting to Carl because he's just automatically assuming that Carl is coming into this with negative intentions. At the end of the day, I can relay very clearly that me and Carl have had no negative intentions throughout the course of that investigation. At the very beginning, it was some discrepancy that came up. We looked into it. And honestly, for me, I really wanted everything to be in Gerard's favor because he really was a wholesome Chungus guy at the time. Look, it really was an issue for me going into this because at the time when I was covering Gerard, it wasn't like covering Logan Paul. It wasn't like covering the fucking FaZe guys. It wasn't like covering an internet scumbag. This is somebody with a wholesome Chungus personality. And it was really the first point where I felt like I had made objective videos about somebody, and people were kind of taking sides based on which personality they liked, which I'm sure is still going to happen in this situation. And it's kind of soured me on investigations, because really it shows me that people are not willing to critically think. They just want to be mad at somebody if they feel that they want to be mad at someone, right? You shouldn't be mad at you shouldn't be mad at an internet personality because, you know, you want to believe whatever bullshit is against them. You should be looking at every single thing critically, right? It goes for personalities you love, personalities that you hate. Look, I wouldn't like to sit here and fucking slander the FaZe guys or slander Logan Paul or any of these people, you know, unless there was something that, like, I believe that they did was wrong, and I can at least objectively prove what they did in those videos were wrong, or I can show you reasonable evidence. So that was actually one of the issues right over here. Him framing it this way is something that I really take offense with. And it's one of the things where, when we'll go on to the later section of this video, you know, all of these mischaracterizations, you know, I just want you to remember, okay? Because he tries to backhand, like, apologize to me and Carl later on. And obviously, given how he's framing the story, doesn't make sense.
Now, when I think of the panic attack from his new response video, it takes me back to a clip from the original video where I really think the panic attack comes from the fact that his own actions led to his organization crumbling down. And it was to a point where he was, like, begging us not to release these videos. And I do distinctly remember before he released the call, I had actually kept this information out. If anything, I was probably being the nicest I could have been to anybody talking, simply because at the time I had a mutual respect for Gerard, to the point where I really wanted to focus on the facts and I didn't want to make him look unnecessarily worse than he was. And when I released the full call, this portion that I'm about to show you, people kind of looked at it as almost blackmail, which I'm not going to say that it is, because blackmail requires like a specific monetary amount. But it just showed me at the time, you know, even before I'd released my initial video, that this guy just cares about himself. And that's pretty much it.
I'm not trying to be like, do you guys want money to help me hide this? It's not what this is at all. I'm just asking from a humanity perspective of, like, if I am the target of this, I have 20 mouths to feed. I have sponsors. I have a business. I'm trying to make video games. I'm trying to get out of content creation so I don't have to worry about YouTube anymore and do better things in the world. And I just know, because of my track record of things like G4 exploding, me being friends with JonTron when he was a racist, you know, I've been a part of, like, you know, Pro Jared, like, pulling one thread about the charity thing is going to upheave my entire life in a way that scares the living crap out of me. And I don't want to go home tonight and tell everyone, hey, there is a gigantic thing coming to claim my career and you all have to close down and find somewhere else to do. I know this is shitting me to say this. I'm not trying to ask for sympathy or anything, but this kind of stuff, I mean, I've been following your guys' stuff for years. The stuff with Billy Mitchell, Carl, the stuff that you've done, Muto, with tons of content creators over the years. Like, there's no nuance to this. People are going to see this and they're going to immediately go, that Gerard guy who's been nice to a bunch of people actually isn't very nice overall. Fuck him. Let's get rid of him.
He had a panic attack, I would imagine, mostly because that he knew that his bullshit was unraveling in this situation. It wasn't that he ever cared about me or even Carl in this situation. I don't know, maybe he respected Carl, but I'm pretty sure he did not respect me whatsoever. Because, you know, even in this call with me, he said that he liked something that I did regarding Logan Paul. I can't exactly remember off the top of my head. But, like, he thought that I was going to be some pushover and Carl was going to be some maniacal, like, conniving fuck throughout this entire situation, which really bugs me. Again, for him, it's mostly that the bullshit that he should have addressed beforehand is getting unraveled. And I'm just going to be nice and say this, right? Listen, at the end of all this, I think me and Carl were probably the best relayers of this information, because there's a lot of people that if they got access to this information and knew how to relay it, they could have been much more nefarious. You know, before he had made his first response, I want you to remember the timeline. We didn't release any of these videos, these calls that had him talking about Pro Jared or, you know, JonTron, or mentioning any of this stuff. Even people who brought up a portion of the call where I guess he alluded to blackmailing us, we didn't bring in. Because honestly, I realized at that point, this is a guy that's saying shit, you know, to try to, like, weasel his way out. But I felt like, honestly, that would just look bad. He brought up family, which we had kept out. You know, because he had asked me to keep that out. I was really nice to him. We only released portions of that call that were germane to this story.
I also want to make it evident that during this call, we absolutely did not accuse him or even lead him to accusations that he would bring up. Like, embezzlement was interesting because he had brought it up in this call. And, you know, I remember at the time, and I'll play the call for you, me and Carl were distinctly not accusing the guy of that. You know, we weren't even accusing of things like tax evasion.
I would never try and scam in honor of my mom. Like, this is, I would not be outward facing knowing that I can get raked through the coals for this when I know and say every year we're a 501c3 organization where everything is public. You know what I mean? Like, it's contradictory for me to be like, it's going to a good cause, but also I'm tax evading or embezzling or whatever it may be. So
no one's suggesting that.
No, there's no tax evasion. No, nobody's, again, like looking through the 501c like filings. No one could say in a million years that what you were doing is indicative. Hold on, let me just actually delete something off of the system here. According to the filings, nobody could say that you were moving money. Like I said, nobody was being charged or billed hours. So you're kind of like, in my opinion, that's not even a point to be talking about. Just doesn't really apply in this situation. The only thing, and I feel like that you should do that could make the situation better, is that $60,000 that's currently sitting. That should, instead of being earmarked like we were told by a member of the organization today, should actually be going to a beneficiary. Because at the end of the day, $660,000 is going to make a difference, right? And it should have made a difference in the last several years as this foundation was operating and receiving these grants. And that's really what you can do. It's like, there's no shame in, realizing that things got fucking wild behind the scenes, but the only way to make it right is not to let the money sit there anymore and to actually, I guess, let it do work. But I don't know, like I think the deception angle, because it is in a way a deceptive angle for the last several years that this has been happening, right? And it's right. It was going to have to come out at some point when somebody was going to look into the filings, right? It could have been us, it could have been Coffee, it could have been anybody, and that's just how the situation has unfolded. But obviously when he threatened to sue us and make us look like fucking assholes in this, obviously we're going to release a call that people at the time could listen to in their entirety. And for him to try and spin this story around is bullshit. Again, this is an insane story because people are not critically thinking. The reason why these videos, this one specifically, is going to be long too, maybe not Carl's length, he said something about his video being 5 hours, is because we have to bring you back to the facts of the case. And the reason why, again, these videos are long is because me and Carl, at least I believe, are presenting actual receipts. We're showing actual videos. We're showing actual receipts to our claims, as opposed to Gerard, who's basically entirety of his responses have just been, trust me, bro. Just trust me, bro. Bro, you're the one that's been objectively fucking lying about your charity's operations for the course of years now.
Terrified, and I should have kept my mouth shut. But some part of me believed that if I was honest right from the get-go, maybe I could get out ahead of this, and it could end up just being more of a cautionary situation.
What is the cautionary situation in this? To not make misleading statements, to not do this kind of bullshit, to not take money from your fans, under the guise that you're donating to this charity that you founded on the fucking, on your mother, the person who brought you into this world. What is the cautionary tale over here, It's one of the things with charities, it's why I never do them, is because ultimately at the end of the day, if I have to donate money, I'll just do it out of the kindness of my own heart. I'll just donate it. I won't even do it for tax offsetting purposes. It literally is just a charitable donation. I'll give my own personal money and I don't even really talk about it. These are things that you could have done at any point. You didn't have to, mislead the audience in such a disgusting way, right? These are the words of people that know that they are guilty. And for understanding, right, just on a personal level, 2 years ago when I was breaking the story, I still had some belief for Gerard that maybe there was a good guy. But at this point, I don't think that, I personally don't even buy a story at this point that he didn't know just for a year. I think the whole time he probably knew things were fucked up, okay? So I'm not believing his bullshit anymore. Simple as that, okay? It used to be that I thought this guy was a complete and utter fucking buffoon. And don't get me wrong, he is an utter buffoon. But I think that personally, he is a malicious buffoon. That is the problem. So I want you to remember early, he said that charities move at a glacial pace.
I had learned the hard way that the charity world moves at a glacial pace, and I've been going around touting all these organizations and all the good we'll be doing for many years, only for all of it to be a bunch of empty promises.
So okay, he knows that the charities move at a glacial pace.
After I stepped up, my best efforts to donate as fast as possible would never be good enough, as every decision I wanted to make now had to be approved by a long list of people on both the open hand side and the potential benefactors that I have been speaking with.
So when he says that charities move at a glacial pace, I want you to listen here now, okay? This is what he said happened after me and Carl released our videos.
3 days later, Monday, November the 13th, Mudahar and Carl released their videos, and the story was broken. It made donating even more important, but even more difficult due to the new online reputation of the Open Hand Foundation and myself. Many of these organizations we'd been speaking with suddenly wanted nothing to do with us, legally informing us to keep our distance, and the situation quickly became desperate. Thankfully, my brother and I were able to secure a meeting with AFTD the very next day, and by November 29th of 2023, the Association of Frontotemporal Dementia received $600,000 from the Open Hand Foundation. Soon after this donation was made, I resigned from my role on the board of directors, ending my relationship with my family's efforts in the Open Hand Foundation.
So on one hand, the charities operate at this glacial pace where you're negotiating for years now, which again, we don't have any email correspondence of. And again, I can't sit here and disprove that no organization wanted to legally work with them. But it's kind of insane to think, again, that they operate on this glacial pace. You've been talking to them for years. And then as soon as, an Australian guy and a fat Indian dude in Canada releases their videos, these organizations suddenly either watch our videos and maybe read a fucking, article that was posted on Dexerto or some shit at the time. And then immediately they're like, all right, we can't have anything to fucking do with you. But then on the same moment, you're able to secure a meeting with the AFTD and donate $600,000 to the point where even the CEO quotes and mentions you guys. You get a whole press release and everything. And this press release from the AFTD is still up, by the way, $600,000, again, for vital research and family support, where even the CEO comes out and gives a little bit of a, statement on it. They mention the actual founder, Charles Khalil, by name, and they even break down, again, the restricted donation being led to the efforts here. So clearly it was a big enough deal for them to get that press release, which, again, $600,000, it was absolutely going to be a big splash in the charity world. And, for a person that says, these organizations really just work with millions of dollars, looking at the Association of Frontotemporal Degeneration based on their EIN number on their website, you can actually look into it and see that, honestly, $600,000 is definitely not a paltry sum. If you compare it to just their revenues, it's actually a pretty decent contribution, all things considered. Unfortunately, you just have to take seemingly forever to get there. This guy really is, either he has the ability to control time or something that I don't know. Because, in his benefit, things can either operate glacially or they can rapidly move, depending on how his story needs to be presented, right? It's fucking insanity when you really think about it, right? And just going by Gerard's story, if you knew after 2022 that something was wrong, granted, if your family were being douchey about moving the money or donating it at that time, you could have simply completely decoupled from the event as to not personally involve yourself that much further, at least from your own company. And the thing is, it's interesting that after we release our videos, in 2 weeks, you can do what your organization failed to do in the last several years. Again, these stories don't make sense when you apply basic critical thinking.
Deserved the facts, and especially the truth. That's why I want to clarify as many of the allegations against me as I can that are absolutely false. First, I want to address the idea that the Open Hand could quickly just donate the money the same way you can just click donate on a charity website or Venmo or PayPal a friend.
Almost everyone is screaming at them just to donate the money, which should be pretty easy to do.
One thing you'll see is they'll ask me to gift an amount that is as low as $35.
The short answer is no. If we wrote a check to a charity with no agreements on how that money gets spent or how it's tracked, we would never have received a report detailing how our donors' money was being put to use. It would likely have gone to funding administrative costs like accounting fees and executive salaries.
So within 2 weeks, you were able to donate $600,000, right? Like, even after you've been exposed. I mean, which one is it, okay? Is it difficult or is it easy to do? And again, I bring up the idea of this, like, donation because, again, anybody can put in any amount they want and they can actually donate it again, and they can even match it so that it's restricted and going to specific causes. But even when it comes to things that are restricted, for instance, I do have to ask if, like, again, does it also make it difficult for charities where, again, he mentions executive salaries, which, yeah, I get that some of them are obviously unreasonably high, but there are employees that do need to be paid in order to process and do things for this charity. I mean, if you're unnecessarily making things annoying for them, maybe that is an issue that is brought up. But they were able to rectify this within 2 weeks. Literally the day of getting exposed, they're already doing meetings with the AFTD, getting themselves involved in press releases. Again, if this was such a massive controversial thing, how is a press release even coming out? And again, when you look into the actual 990 PFs for what appears to be the AFTD, which was the organization donated to, it seems like they were donating around 5% of their actual, like, yearly gross, which is fucking massive when it comes to, like, raising money. So obviously, you know, they wanted to raise tens of millions of dollars or make it sound like charities only talk to you when it comes to tens of millions of dollars. Remember, they ended up getting a fucking press release for $600,000. Even the CEO came out and kind of glazed them a little bit. So again, none of this story makes any sense the more you actually look into how the facts have played out. And even when it comes to donating money too, right? Like, anybody can write a check. For instance, I'll just show you really quickly, like, if I can pull it up. There were times where, obviously, during the course of, you know, the last 2 years, I donated money to Palestinian relief. So in some cases, when I do donate money, it's not obviously $600,000, but in a case where I donated around $10,000 myself, personally, you know, you do actually have that payment process. And yes, in cases, there are people that work in these charitable organizations because 10,000, I think anything 5,000 and above is considered a huge charity. They will reach out to you, like as they did to me, to confirm if that donation matched. It's a simple matter of saying, yeah, actually it did match. If he was able to do it within 2 weeks, why wasn't he able to do it for years back then? Again, the ultimate excuse from him is that they wanted to stack the $1 million donation and make it totally restricted, which I guess is a story now, but why was this never brought up during our call or even back then? Again, this is a story that he's sort of like making up now to make it seem like that was the ultimate goal. But remember, if you look at the facts of the case, this wasn't really even a thing that was brought up to us in our initial investigation. This only started becoming a Cope story long after his, like, even his first response, or well, around his first response. Now, this is arguably one of the big egregious lies that he has too, where he talks about, you know, like the accounting of money that was donated, right? So again, he basically talks about Twitch revenue, and he lies at this point about it. So I'll explain this as we go, because it's a lot to unpack. So let's listen to his statement. Now, I want you to remember, back when we first looked into his IRS documentation, which, again, just for this case, let's pull it up one more time. So IRS, or we'll just go to the ProPublica charity lookup. So for the year 2021, we'll just open up the filing, so to speak, right over here. Now, in the filing, one thing that you'll notice is that the contributions they received were $136,695. Now, at the time, me and Carl were kind of looking at another event that was run by the Open Hand Foundation, which was their golf tournament. Now, very little does Gerard actually talk about this golf tournament, and you know, I'm gonna just mention that maybe it's not germane to him because he probably doesn't really know much about that, since Indieland is sort of his bread and butter and contribution to this overall project. But $136,000 was listed in this system, or listed in this amount. Now, why is that necessarily important? So let's go to the year 2021 when it comes to, again, Gerard's spreadsheet that he provided. So again, to open up Gerard's dogshit spreadsheet, if we go to the Indieland revenue in 2021, you can see that Twitch revenue and direct donations are listed here. But if we looked at the net total from all funding sources, and the reasonable assumption here is that it's the net total, right? The net total of every source, 2021 comes out to $75,481.70. Now, the reason why I say that the audience that Gerard is catering to, that believes every single thing that he says, lacks critical thinking, is because somebody would just easily say, okay, well, let's look at Indieland 2021, a verifiable, reputable source in this case where the actual charity was being done. So if we just look up Indieland 2021 in Google search, we can go to the Tiltify campaign. And in the Tiltify campaign, it says they raised $113,000 and $146,000 and 33 fucking cents. Okay, so again, if we go to the fucking Indieland annual revenue, bro, there is a big difference between $75,481 fucking dollars. Okay, and what was directly donated in Indieland. I mean, the numbers are right. What do the fucking numbers mean, Mason? What's happening? Now, of course, you can look at the other things. Oh, maybe that's an honest fucking mistake, Muda. Let's look at Indieland, 2022. Okay, so let's go over here. Indieland 2022. And if we go to Indieland 2022, click on the fucking Tiltify here, $90,582. So again, inside the spreadsheet, it's listed at $81,169. Now, mind you, it wasn't just Indieland that raised this money. It was bits, super chats, which he had mentioned in his own voice, and of course, he also mentioned merch, ticket sales.
Before we introduce our guests and devs for this round, I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who's been donating at home. We are getting closer and closer to our goal. Our goal is 100K. Just to reiterate, subscriptions and bits are not included. Neither the t-shirt sales from the Indieland t-shirt, which you can purchase down below in the pin. Neither the games from Nexus. If you want to go to nexus.gg/Indieland or click the link in the box down below, you can buy a bunch of great indie games, and the proceeds go to the devs, but also go to the Open Hand Foundation. All of they'll be factored in at the very, very, very end.
Like, I'm not understanding, okay, what's going on. He presents this entire thing as like, this is the money, right? Twitch revenue and direct donations. Homie, where are the merch sales? Where are the other revenue sources that you're not putting in this list? Again, this number is fucking meaningless. Unless you go back to his statements and start to realize that it seems things are missing, okay? So for me, it doesn't matter how many sheets or cells that he makes, okay? You know, he could just go to Copilot and say, make me a 90-page thing that looks legit. Wouldn't matter to me, okay? Wouldn't really matter. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when I'm looking at expenses, I'm looking at just the revenue sheets, the math doesn't make sense. And might I remind you, that was where the controversy really came into. It wasn't that me and fucking Carl were sitting out there with a napkin, writing down and doing fucking bullshit math. It's that we had genuine questions to ask. Am I wrong in questioning this spreadsheet with his prior statements? And even with his new response now, am I crazy? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, the thing is, even when it comes to Tiltify, right? When you look at Tiltify's website, they come up and basically say when a donation is made, a transaction fee may be taken by a third-party payment provider. When we work with the charity and their payment account directly, that fee would be whatever their typical transaction fee is. When donations are made, 100% of the donation is then sent directly to the charity account intended in real time. From the contributions received by a charity, Tiltify is paid a contribution fee for our technology and services. So since the charity in this case was the Open Hand Foundation, whatever we saw in the Tiltify, whatever numbers he's giving should reflect in there. And of course, this is just money mentioned here. It doesn't go into actual direct contributions made by Jamie Lee Curtis's Skizizi Foundation, which you can verify for yourself as well, them giving money to the Open Hand Foundation. These are all things that should lead people to question. And there were people that were questioning, at least me and Carl. One of them was an accountant, I think is accounting in YouTube. And initially when this video came out, I think Carl saw it and said that this was complete dog shit. And he raised a lot of points to me. But honestly, at this moment in time, I'm going to leave it to Carl's video when he uploads it. And I believe he might even send me like a little portion. He can actually explain this in a really salient way. So I'm going to let him sort of speak on this.
In situations like this, the most reasonable way to calculate what the revenue should be would be to deduct the direct costs of Indieland and net it against the gross proceeds, and it would all be considered a contribution.
This accountant thinks that donations are going to Indieland, and then Indieland is subtracting expenses and then making a contribution to the Open Hand Foundation. This is so wrong that it demonstrates this accountant essentially did zero research into what Indieland is, or what Tiltify is, or how Indieland functions. He even admits he doesn't even know who hosts Indieland. This is pretty important information.
Throughout all of my research, I found nothing conclusive. We know that Gerard is the main host of the event, but is he doing it on behalf of OpenHand, or is he doing it on behalf of the team that comprises that one video gamer, which he is also associated with?
You know, this is like insane because, again, for somebody who's wanting to debunk us, he literally could have easily just gone to the call that me and Carl both had posted 2 years ago. And inside that same call, you know, this is a question that was actually like solidified by Carl, right? Carl made sure to understand what these organizations were. Even Gerard clarifies this. If this guy put in an ounce of research, he would have been able to identify this basic salient fact.
Just to clarify that we are officially through Tiltify and through the above board right means I did not move anything, any money for that. Just because the way you said that made it seem like I was moving money into accounts, and I that's not what I did by any means.
Oh, no.
But
My clarification. Go ahead.
I guess on that topic, I mean, but OpenHand was paying expenses on behalf of IndieLand, correct?
Sorry, what was that?
So IndieLand is a separate thing from OpenHand. But
correct.
Were you saying that OpenHand was paying expenses for IndieLand though?
Only some years and no more than a couple $1,000 depending on the year. If it was too much money, just to make it right, because you're not supposed to really do that especially when you have no operating expenses. I'd only reimburse myself and I did it appropriately through the OpenHand when applicable, but not every year and no more than a couple $1,000 maximum.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a safe haven of like moving money and spending money on purpose. Because again, that all goes against.
Okay. But OpenHand and IndieLand they have to be the same entity in a way. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an expense of OpenHand to pay for IndieLand if they weren't, kind of one and the same. If that makes sense.
Sorry, could you ask the question?
Yeah, so
so
so OpenHand and IndieLand are connected because OpenHand because OpenHand is paying for IndieLand. Otherwise, IndieLand, if it was a separate entity, IndieLand would be paying for itself, not OpenHand. If that makes sense.
Correct, but not every year. Not every year does IndieLand get paid for by OpenHand. It comes from me and IndieLand is not its own organization. The company that I founded for the Completionist is the company that puts on IndieLand in all of our charity events. And typically speaking, we don't reimburse ourselves unless it's paramount to how much money we spent. But it's never been.
But I'll let Carl discuss something that I found pretty hilarious in this situation.
Is unreliable. I will come back to this accountant's video later because it really is one of the worst videos ever. But before I move on, let me demonstrate how clueless this accountant is. Listen to this section talking about the Sunmark Golf Classic.
It's important for people to know that just because a website or a tweet or anything you find online states that X amount of money was raised, that doesn't always mean that's what gets reported as the donation. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. So we're looking at a web page from the Sunmark Credit Union where it states that they raised a record-breaking $85,000 for their Sunmark Charitable Community Foundation. This was specifically in relation to the annual charity golf tournament that they hold, and this was for the year 2022. When we go to the Sunmark Charitable Community Foundation 2022 990 PF form, we're going to scroll down to the Schedule B, which is the schedule of contributors. When we go to the actual listing, we see that the Sunmark Credit Union only donated $50,000 and not the $85,000 that was raised according to the website.
The point he is trying to make is that just because an event raised a certain amount of money, that doesn't mean that's the amount of money that is donated, which of course can be true. But everything he said in regards to this golf fundraiser is just totally wrong. Now, I like to pride myself on the fact that when I make claims in videos, I show the evidence on screen. That way you can see for yourselves. But I'm beginning to notice a disturbing trend by people like Gerard and people who defend people like Gerard, where they will show things on screen when they make claims while saying things that the documents shown on screen don't say at all. And this act of putting something on screen gives the impression that what they are saying is backed up by what they are showing. But when you actually read what they put on screen, you find out they are completely misrepresenting what they are showing. The accountant shows an article that says the Sunmark Credit Union raised $85,000 for the Sunmark Charitable Community Foundation. He then compares this to the foundation's tax filing, which shows a donation of only $50,000 from the Sunmark Credit Union. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if not a single person who watched this section realized that what he just said is completely idiotic and grossly misleading. He connects two things, a fundraiser and this donation. But why? Is it because they both have Sunmark in the name? What does this $50,000 donation have to do with this golf fundraiser? If you actually read the article, you'll notice that it lists a bunch of sponsors. For this tournament, the premier sponsor was Maguire Cardona, and when I checked the Schedule B on the foundation's tax filings, it shows Maguire Cardona as a contributor. For non-profit charitable organizations, if a single donor contributes more than $5,000, the non-profit needs to attach a Schedule B, which lists the amount and the donor's details. Using the Wayback Machine, I can see that this particular golf fundraiser works very similar to how the Open Hands golf fundraiser works. It has tiers for sponsors, and in 2022, the premier sponsor cost $7,500. This is more than $5,000, so they had to be listed on the Schedule B. And I assume they also purchased a gaming sponsor or something similar for $1,000. I know that this $8,500 relates to the golf fundraiser because they were listed as the premier sponsor, and that's how much it cost. The article also listed sponsors for the Platinum tier, which cost $5,000, and I can also see them on the Schedule B. But the fundraiser also had lower tiers, which won't show on the Schedule B because the amount is less than $5,000. The article points out that they had a total of 75 corporate sponsors. Now, get ready because we are going to slowly peel back the layers of stupidity in what the accountant said. The first layer of stupidity is the fact he didn't even realize that these sponsors, the ones that were included in the $85,000, were in fact on the Schedule B, and he didn't even notice. So his statement that only $50,000 was donated is obviously incorrect. Now let's peel back the second layer of stupidity. The accountant implied that donations were given to the Sunmark Credit Union, who then contributed a lump sum to the foundation. But the fact that these sponsors are showing as contributors to the charity itself tells us this isn't what happened. Sponsors weren't giving money to the Sunmark Credit Union, they were giving money directly to the foundation. And that's because this was a fundraiser run by the foundation itself and not by the Sunmark Credit Union. And if you check the expenses of the foundation, you'll see they spent $42,000 on golf fundraising expenses, because it was their fundraiser. So it doesn't make sense because on one hand, you have sponsors donating directly to the charity, and the charity was paying for the fundraiser expenses, but on the other hand, this accountant is claiming that the Sunmark Credit Union was the one receiving the donations, keeping a portion of those donations to pay for expenses, and then making a bulk contribution of net proceeds. Both cannot be true for the same fundraiser. But things become even more clear when the accountant talks about 2023.
We can also see for the Sunmark Credit Union, their 2023 annual charity golf tournament raised $80,000 for the Sunmark Community Foundation. When we go to the 2023 990PF filing for the Sunmark Charitable Community Foundation, we're going to go to the Schedule B, the Schedule of Contributors. When we go to the listing, we're going to see that they actually donated $55,000 of the $80,000 that was raised.
In 2023, the fundraiser raised over $80,000, and the Schedule B for that year's tax filing has more donors on it. I can connect all of these donors to the golf fundraiser because the article for the 2023 event lists them all by name and tier, and I can cross-check the amount sponsors paid on the Wayback Machine with their listed tiers. But if you add all of these donors up, including the one the accountant claims was for the golf event, it already adds up to way more than $80,000. And this isn't including all of the lower tiers, including a bunch of gold sponsors at $3,000 each, and everything else that wouldn't appear on the Schedule B. The article says there were 67 corporate sponsors in total, so when you add it all up, that would be well over $100,000. The math isn't mathing. And then you realize, this $55,000 contribution, the one that the accountant says was for the golf fundraising event, has nothing to do with the golf event at all. It's just a yearly contribution that the Sunmark Credit Union gives to its foundation. When the accountant said that this donation was for the golf fundraiser, he pulled that claim straight out of his ass. And the fact that he didn't even see the other sponsors listed as contributors is so egregiously sloppy that it honestly makes me wonder if it was intentional. The only thing that makes me attribute this to incompetence rather than malice is the fact that he was willing to talk with me after I reached out. But the layers of stupidity go even deeper. As I said before, this golf fundraiser is very similar to the type of golf fundraiser the Open Hand Foundation runs. They both have sponsors and tiers. It's basically the same. The accountant pulls up the Schedule B for the Sunmark Foundation, and while the accountant is oblivious to the fact that the golf sponsors above $5,000 are on there, they are in fact on there. And that's because this foundation did their tax filing correctly. So in my opinion, the next logical step would be to ask, well, what about the Open Hand Schedule B, which in theory should also exist. But when you go and look at the Open Hand's 990PF filings, the Schedule B is non-existent. And not only is it non-existent, they even ticked a box that says they aren't required to file a Schedule B. Even ignoring the golf sponsors for a moment, this is just incorrect. We already know they have at least one donor that gave more than $5,000, and that was the Syzygy Foundation. So they needed to be filing a Schedule B, if for no other reason than that one single grant. Gerard even mentions it in his initial response video.
And $10,000 from a direct supporter.
But I also know they have other sponsors of over $5,000 just through their Tiltify campaigns as well. The Open Hand Foundation needed to have been filing a Schedule B with all of their filings, and they haven't been. And they have also been incorrectly asserting that they don't need to attach one. This essentially equates to them hiding where the money is coming from, which is exactly what the Schedule B requirement is supposed to prevent. On their 2022 990PF, the Open Hand Foundation even listed golf fundraiser expenses as an expense, exactly like the Sunmark Foundation did. But while the Open Hand Foundation claimed expenses for the golf fundraiser, suggesting that it was a fundraiser event they ran, the sponsor income doesn't exist. I pressed the accountant on this exact point, and he agreed that it seemed like the Open Hand Foundation should have been attaching a Schedule B showing their significant contributors. This appears to be a glaring error in their filings. And when I asked why he didn't mention this in his video, he simply said that wasn't the point of his video. And of course, that's true. The point of the accountant's video wasn't to try and uncover the truth about what was going on with the Open Hand Foundation, it was merely to try and gain clout by capitalizing on the Carl and Muta hate bandwagon.
So I think, honestly, that's a pretty sufficient explanation by Carl in this entire situation. And the reason why I wanted to let Carl explain that is because ultimately it was him that found this discrepancy, and it was him that really pressed the actual accountant over here on YouTube. And if the accountant said that that wasn't the point of the video, I think that's really all you need to get from this, because really, these are not people that are coming from objective viewpoints in this situation. They're people that are, again, like Carl would say, trying to capitalize on the controversy that I and Carl had gotten into. Now, again, Carl has more of a response in his video that's coming out that has to do with this actual that comes with this actual accountant. So I'll let him basically do what he needs to over in this situation. But again, there are a couple last lingering issues that Gerard mentions in his video, and we'll get through these pretty quickly because his video is going on longer than I ever wanted it to be.
Now, I wish I could end the video right here and move on and not acknowledge my detractors beyond easily debunked numbers and misunderstood compliance laws.
Bro, there are not debunked numbers. You just gave us more questions to ask over here. Again, he just like, he shows like 3 things, says a few fucking like woe is me statements. Bro, we have more questions now than ever.
Fortunately, Carl and Mudahar have made themselves impossible to ignore. They have inserted themselves into my story whether I like it or not. Both of them have perpetuated and publicized numerous conspiracy theories about myself and my family online, and this has led to irreparable harm to not just myself, but everyone associated with my family, including personal information being leaked, stalking, public harassment, and so much more. It doesn't matter that these guys never explicitly said they believe some of this stuff, nor do they verbally condone bad faith attacks. They discussed and entertained several conspiracies that directly hurt people who had nothing to do with any of this at all.
Okay, all right. What did we entertain over here? So again, he says that neither of us endorsed any crazy conspiracy theories. So at this point, I was wondering, like, what were the conspiracy theories that I even mentioned? So he brings up one example, which, again, it's crazy. When he has an example, he'll put it in his video. So let's listen to it.
But as a likely reality, despite the fact that no hard evidence of embezzlement has ever existed.
One of the actual conspiracies for this is, one user writes, they just needed a few weeks to secure a loan or liquidate assets to come up with the money to do this. If this conspiracy theory is true and the California DOJ or the IRS are investigating, that's going to draw some serious eyeballs over to them. So if that money is there, just prove it exists. I get it. You're behind lawyers and PR agencies.
If this was actually true, the DOJ would have caught it instantly and acted accordingly.
So at this point, like, I'm watching this video and I'm wondering, okay, is that really it? Like, how is this the most hard-hitting, entertained conspiracy theory? Ultimately, at the end of the day, I read, like, some Reddit comment that led to the question that, hey, man, if the money's not there, they're just putting it in. Again, even he says that I'm not explicitly endorsing it, but I have to imagine, like, what is the personal slight here? Where is this invoking the most personal attack on you and your family? Again, may I remind you, in this entire case, I left the family out of it. But see, this is where earlier I said, like, he'll show a clip when, he has something or he thinks he has something. Then he starts bringing up more serious conspiracy theories that do not allude to me and really get taken way out of context for Carl.
An even more outrageous conspiracy tries to allege that my dad poisoned my mom in order to not just worsen her condition, but maybe even cause her diagnosis in the first place. These were particularly nasty conspiracies that I wanted to address in my initial response video from December of 2023, where I shared my mom's autopsy report to prove that yes, she did live and die with frontotemporal dementia. Some people were a little confused about this and were extremely upset that I used my mom's death certificate in that way that I did. But seeing all these accusations that were swirling around me, even the truth of my mom's disorder was now officially being questioned.
I love how he, like, says this and then shows no clip of me entertaining the mom poisoning conspiracy theory. Like, again, the way that he's framing it is so insensitive. Again, listen, I don't really care what happened with the mother towards the end of her life. There really was no reason for me to see the autopsy report. It really felt like he put that in there for no real reason. Now, in this, he shows, like, one Reddit post that I don't even really recall seeing. But, I mean, it's been, 2 years? But anyways, I don't really recall seeing this Reddit post. And then he shows, like, a little snippet from Carl's Discord messages. You're telling me you can look up all of his Discord messages? You can find, like, 200 Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild? But you can't find one clip of me entertaining this fucking conspiracy theory because it actually is just an unhinged conspiracy theory. It is interesting because the more you look into Carl's messages, he did provide me context showing that it was actually in discussion of a story that Gerard himself even discussed with on the Collider.
And to leave my Discord messages on screen, praising Gerard's own story.
And so he and my mom started this company together. And when I say started this company together, I mean he asked for money and she gave him everything he asked for. And lo and behold, this man known as Bill Head was actually not Bill Head. He was a con man from Tennessee.
And again, you know, it's insane how he frames this as like entertaining a conspiracy theory when really no one was doing that, okay? No one on this end was. Maybe I might have brought up something in regards to the, earlier claim that he, like I said, when he has a video clip of me doing something that he thinks he's got a note on me, he'll show it. But when he doesn't, it's just, trust me, bro, simple as that. Like, what?
So, where do we go from here? Even if I somehow recover from this controversy, things can never be the same as they once were. Does that mean the Completionist, the show, my channel, my livelihood? Is it all just dead? No. Hell no. I still complete games. I actually never stopped completing games. Even through the entirety of last year, I completed well over a dozen games just because I wanted to. At the end of the day, I still love making videos. I'm not a drama YouTuber or anything like that. I play games and just want to make videos about the things that I'm passionate about.
He says all of this shit as if literally 2 years ago on a call, he didn't just come out and say, guys, I'm just trying to get out of content creation.
I'm not trying to be like, do you guys want money to help me hide this? It's not what this is at all. I'm just asking from a humanity perspective of like, if I am the target of this, I have 20 mouths to feed. I have sponsors. I have a business. I'm trying to make video games. I'm trying to get out of content creation so I don't have to worry about YouTube anymore and do better things in the world.
Tog, it's crazy that this is the guy that apparently can find every fucking Korok seed in Breath of the Wild, but he just can't give us a salient email to look at when it comes to talking to many charities. This guy is full of shit, okay? The reason he's coming back is because ultimately you can't take years off playing fucking video games, completing them on your off time without a substantial income, okay? I'm sure he's burned every bridge with his family, yada, 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 and now he's got to make some fucking money, okay? I get it. I understand. But don't fucking come onto the moral high horse and pretend that this is some passion you fucking care about. Shut the fuck up.
With all that being said, though, what I did not do was steal, embezzle, or otherwise misappropriate donor funds for anything. Every cent of money donated was always there, waiting to find a benefactor. Any claims of theft, embezzlement, or fraud are categorically false.
Any claim of fraud is categorically false. As you just literally said that you knew for a fucking year that things weren't the way that they should have been, and you still ran an event, making statements you shouldn't have. Oh boy. Oh god, I'm gonna fucking die.
Embezzlement or fraud are categorically false. I also want to apologize to Carl and Mutahar. Despite my criticisms, I know what it's like to have your entire life scrutinized by tens of thousands of strangers who just want to see you fail, and nobody deserves that. I know you both.
Bro, honestly, you fucking do. Simple as that. I don't give a shit. This guy spent like the last 20 minutes of this video characterizing me and Carl as fucking bad faith people. So this whole thing is just empty. This whole thing doesn't fucking matter. This whole thing is just dog shit to listen to. At the end of the day, I'm just going to say it like this, okay? You want to bring up the engineer shit? That's fine, okay? That is cool. It pales in comparison to the astronomically fraudulent way that you ran your charity, okay? So again, you can keep bringing up the greatest hits. We can do that till the end of time. But you are, in fact, a complete piece of shit. Not only are you a piece of shit, but you are a manipulative piece of shit. And 2 years ago, I thought you were just fucking stupid. But now I know that you're just not only stupid, you're actually maliciously stupid. So I'm going to end it off here. Okay, I don't really care about the apology. I'm not going to play this fucking game where, let's move past. No, I think this guy's a piece of shit. Okay, simply. I think he's a bigger piece of shit than some of the FaZe guys that I looked at. He's a bigger piece of shit than like JC. He's a bigger piece of shit than anybody that I think I've covered, okay? And I'm actually more pissed off too, because not only am I doing this video, but I'm responding to such bad faith that it honestly fucking hurts. Now look, hate me all you want, love me all you want. At the end of the day, I provided receipts and facts to this entire situation. And I want to move on from this. I really do. At the end of the day, the next video that I want to make is something about Linux, probably about a computer hack, something about gaming, I know that these videos tend to do really well, but at the end of the day, they're just fucking mentally exhausting. But I can't lie, man. Sometimes I do like getting into the fucking Viper pit, and I do like making these kind of videos. I'll be fucking real with you. But they are exhausting. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I'm out.